Good evening. Welcome to our Clean Cars Minnesota Rulemaking Information Session. I'm Maggie Winger. During today's virtual meeting, we will have a video introduction by MPCA Commissioner Laura Bishop, followed by a presentation on the regulatory analysis for this rule. This is where we present information that supports why our state needs these rules and the benefits they would provide. Following the presentation, we will address questions from participants using a Q&A chat feature. Please note the rulemaking process has now entered a new phase where interested persons need to share comments directly with an administrative law judge who is overseeing the process. People can submit comments to the judge directly by mail or through the e-comments website, and also during online hearings that will be held in February. You will hear more information about all this later in the meeting. This meeting will be focused on providing you with information about the proposed rules and the opportunity to ask questions. There will be approximately 30 minutes for questions after the presentation. Note, you are able to turn on closed captioning by clicking on the little icon on the right side of your screen. Please keep in mind we cannot answer questions about enforcement or implementation at this time, or questions related to any ongoing litigation. Thank you for coming, and we will get started now with comments from MPCA Commissioner Laura Bishop.
Hello, and welcome to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency's public information session about the Clean Cars Minnesota rulemaking. I'm Laura Bishop, MPCA Commissioner. Adopting clean car emission standards is critical in our work to protect against climate change, which is happening here and now with devastating effects seen and felt across our great state. The clean car standards have two goals. The first is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which is the leading cause of climate change. The second goal is to provide Minnesotans with more choices when purchasing cleaner electric and hybrid vehicles. Transportation is currently the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in Minnesota, and light and medium duty vehicles, meaning the cars, trucks, and SUVs we drive each day, produce more than half of all transportation emissions in Minnesota. To address climate change, Minnesota has set ambitious goals for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Our goals are outlined in the Next Generation Energy Act, passed with bipartisan support in the Minnesota legislature and signed into law by Governor Tim Pawlenty in 2007. The act requires the state to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 15% by 2015, 30% by 2025, and 80% by 2050, all from a 2005 baseline. But so far, Minnesota is way off track. Emissions have only decreased by 8% overall since 2005. That means we missed our target in 2015. And at this rate, Minnesota is not on track to meet future goals either. In fact, data from recent years shows we're heading in the wrong direction, and emissions will continue to increase unless we take immediate action. We began the Clean Cars Minnesota effort in September 2019. Governor Tim Walz urged the agency to take action beyond federal vehicle emission standards and adopt the clean car standards that are used by more than a dozen states across the country, including Colorado, Maine, and Washington. Also in 2019, state agencies, including MPCA and the Minnesota Department of Transportation, had just wrapped up a major study of how to reduce emissions from transportation. According to public input gathered for the Pathways to Decarbonizing Transportation report, Minnesotans want and expect action from state leaders for cleaner, lower carbon transportation options, including adopting clean car standards. The proposed rule would allow Minnesota to adopt two vehicle emission standards that only apply to new vehicles for sale in our state. It would ensure Minnesotans who are shopping for a new vehicle will continue to have access to the cleanest cars, trucks, and SUVs available, and more electric vehicles to choose from. But this is just one part of a larger integrated strategy to build a cleaner, lower carbon transportation system here in Minnesota. To successfully reduce emissions, our state needs a multi-pronged approach that also includes building the necessary infrastructure for EVs, which means more charging stations around the state, supporting biofuels and other cleaner fuels, Community efforts to reduce emissions, like investing in transit and making biking and walking safer and more accessible. The MPCA is also leading work to address these other things. We are funding projects to build out the EV charging network across Minnesota. And another project is to replace old diesel burning school buses with electric models, which will reduce harmful emissions and protect students from pollution. Adopting the Clean Cars Minnesota rule is a practical strategy for reducing emissions and an important step to protect our communities, improve air quality, and support a healthy climate. I encourage you to visit our website to learn more about the proposed rule. Just go online and search Clean Cars Minnesota. Thank you for your interest in this rulemaking.
We want to thank Commissioner Bishop for providing context for the proposed rules and our meeting today. A copy of this video of the Commissioner is available on our MPCA Clean Cars Rulemaking website, where we have also saved a copy of the slides you will see in our presentation today. In addition, a recording of this entire virtual meeting, including the Q&A session, will be available on our website tomorrow. Before turning the meeting over to Amanda Smith, who will take us through the presentation, let's review guidelines for this virtual meeting and what you can expect as a participant. If you are joining this meeting on a smartphone, computer, or tablet using the link provided, you will hear presenters speak and see any content they are sharing. You can submit questions during and after the presentation using the question and answer chat feature on the right side of your screen. If the Q&A chat window is not open, select the Q&A icon in the top right corner, then type your question in the chat window. We will hold all questions until after the presentation. And remember, you can turn on closed captioning by clicking on the icon on the right side of your screen. If you are calling into the meeting using the phone number provided, you will hear presenters speaking, but you will not be able to ask questions during the presentation or see any slides or other content being shared. We will do our best to describe what appears on the slides, and when it comes time for the Q&A session, we will read the questions and our answers out loud. If you have access to the internet and would like to view the slides and follow along, open a browser window and search the phrase Clean Cars Minnesota Rulemaking. That should bring you to the right web page. Then scroll down to Public Information Sessions. A PDF file of these slides is available there. Please note, all participants in the meeting will remain muted throughout. This means that MPCA staff cannot hear you if you ask a question out loud. Here are some other reminders. We will do our best to answer as many questions as we can during the allotted time, but please note we will not be able to answer certain types of questions, for example, those related to enforcement or implementation of the proposed rule, or any that would relate to ongoing litigation. In addition, MPCA staff cannot take rulemaking comments during this information session. Instead, your comments should be submitted directly to the administrative law judge through the Office of Administrative Hearings. We'll explain how to do this at the end of our presentation, so please stay with us. And now I would like to introduce Amanda Smith, who will take us through the presentation.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. All right. As Maggie said, I'm Amanda Jarrett Smith. I'm the Climate and Energy Policy Planner at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and the project coordinator for this rulemaking. Thanks for joining us today to learn more about the Clean Cars Minnesota rulemaking. This presentation will have three main parts. First, I'm going to walk through the proposed Clean Cars Minnesota rule and the two emission standards. Then I'm going to give a brief overview of the MPCA's analysis of the proposed rule and its potential effects. Then I'll cover how you can give feedback and participate in this part of the rulemaking process. Immediately following the presentation, we'll have time for questions and answers with myself and other MPCA staff. So let's get started. The Clean Cars Minnesota rulemaking would enable the state to adopt two clean car standards, known as the Low Emission Vehicle Standard, or LEV, and the Zero Emission Vehicle Standard, or ZEV. The low emission vehicles are traditional cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks that run relatively cleanly on liquid fuels. Zero emission vehicles are powered by electricity and have no tailpipe emissions. As Commissioner Bishop introduced, these standards would work together to ensure that Minnesotans shopping for a new vehicle will have access to the cleanest models available and more options for electric vehicles. These standards have been adopted by a number of other states, including Colorado, Maine, and Washington, so we have seen them in action. We know the standards work, that vehicle manufacturers can comply with them successfully, and we have a community of other states to learn from that includes cold weather climates and rural communities. This slide shows a map of the 14 states and the District of Columbia that have adopted the low emission vehicle standard. Nearly all have also adopted the zero emission vehicle standard. It also shows the 3 additional states that are currently in progress. Along with Minnesota, Nevada, and New Mexico are currently working to adopt both clean car standards. All states that have adopted clean car standards have used a similar rulemaking process, with the exception of Washington, D.C., which is not a state. The low emission vehicle standard, or LEV, sets limits for tailpipe pollution for auto manufacturers, meaning it regulates the amount of greenhouse gases and other harmful air pollution that new vehicles can emit. This standard is nothing new. The auto industry has been successfully meeting this standard since 2012. LEV certified vehicles are already what's for sale on Minnesota lots. In fact, because the federal standard and the LEV standard were the same from between 2012 and until 2020, all new vehicles sold in Minnesota over the last 8 years have been LEV certified vehicles. Adopting the LEV standard now would preserve consumer access to the cleaner, more efficient vehicles that Minnesotans enjoy today. It's also important to note that the LEV standard becomes more stringent over time, which means that it requires the auto industry to make incremental progress year over year in producing cleaner, lower emitting vehicles. The zero emission vehicle standard, or ZEV, works a bit differently. It requires auto manufacturers to deliver more zero emission vehicles for sale in Minnesota, increasing each year. Here we're talking about battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid models. The exact number of vehicles is linked to the auto manufacturer's overall sales within the state. And like LEV, the standard also calls for incremental progress over time, not sudden overnight change. Right now, there are simply more makes and models of electric vehicles available in states that have adopted the ZEV standard than we can easily acquire here. 2 examples we hear about are the Subaru Crosstrek Hybrid and the Kia Niro EV, electric SUV options that aren't offered in Minnesota currently. Auto manufacturers are investing billions of dollars in developing this technology and bringing new makes and models to the market. This slide includes an image of the Ford F-150 electric model, which is just one example among many new electric SUVs, crossovers, and pickup trucks that are coming down the pike. In the past, we've been on the tail end of receiving new makes and models of electric vehicles, but we want to ensure that Minnesota is on the forefront of receiving this new innovation. And there's a potential knock-on effect too. More new EVs on the market here could lead to more used EVs becoming available for our secondary markets. This slide lists some of the basic facts about the proposed Clean Cars Minnesota rule. It would apply to new light and medium duty vehicles only. It does not apply to off-road or heavy duty vehicles or equipment like farm equipment or semi-trucks. It does not apply to existing vehicles or used vehicles and does not require anyone to get rid of a vehicle they already own. It does not require emissions testing. The proposed rule does not require any individual to purchase an EV and does not eliminate popular vehicles like SUVs or pickup trucks. This slide shows the possible timeline for implementation if the proposed rule is approved by the administrative law judge and the MPCA completes the rulemaking process in 2021. The federal government would also need to restore California's waiver under the Federal Clean Air Act before implementation could begin. As the timeline illustrates in the green section, the Federal Clean Air Act requires a 2-year waiting period between adopting and implementing the clean car standards. This means that there is considerable time built in for auto manufacturers to plan and prepare for the standards before the standards would go into effect in Minnesota. The proposed rule would affect new vehicles for sale starting in model year 2025, which is approximately January 2024. We are also proposing an early action credit system to encourage manufacturers to bring more EVs to Minnesota even sooner. Earning early action credits would be optional for manufacturers, but would provide an incentive for them to ramp up their EV offerings before 2024. As part of the rulemaking process, MPCA staff are required to conduct a thorough technical analysis of the potential effects of the proposed rule and share these results with the presiding administrative law judge and the public. This is called the Statement of Need and Reasonableness, or SONAR. On the next few slides, I'll walk through the results of this analysis, but if you'd like a deeper dive, you can access the full SONAR document on the MPCA's website. As we go through the results, I'll give page numbers from the SONAR where you can find more information. As Commissioner Bishop introduced, the primary goal of this rulemaking is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from transportation by making sure Minnesotan consumers have access to cleaner traditional vehicles and more electric vehicles. The chart on this slide shows the annual well-to-wheel greenhouse gas emissions reductions in the first 10 years of implementation, starting with model year 2025, continuing through 2034. MPCA uses well-to-wheel emissions calculations to make sure we are capturing the fullest picture of emissions and potential benefits. This means our analysis includes emissions from tailpipes from vehicles, as well as emissions from the power plants used to generate electricity for powering electric vehicles, and liquid fuel extraction, transportation, and processing. You can find this chart with more information on page 77 of the SONAR. Our analysis estimates that the Clean Cars Minnesota rule would reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 8.4 million tons in the first 10 years of implementation. What starts as a modest emission reduction for model year 2025 grows into bigger and bigger benefits each year. By model year 2034, we estimate that the Clean Cars Minnesota rule would reduce 1.4 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions in that year alone. This graph only shows the first 10 years of implementation, so it's important to note that this benefit would continue to grow for at least another decade beyond this time frame. MPCA's analysis also indicates that the proposed rule would increase consumer choice for electric vehicles. Our analysis showed that EVs make up less than 0.3% of new vehicles on the lot for sale in Greater Minnesota and less than 1% of new vehicles on sale in the Twin Cities metro area. That's not a lot of choices for consumers to consider when shopping for a new vehicle. Meanwhile, our analysis shows that dealers in cold weather ZEV states like Vermont, New York, and Connecticut are carrying higher numbers of EVs on lots in comparably sized communities, more like 1 to 3% of available vehicles for sale. The numbers here are still not large, but they do indicate that dealers in ZEV states with similar climates are carrying higher percentage of EVs on their lots, including in smaller towns. You can find more information about EV availability on page 49 of the SONAR. Next, MPCA's analysis demonstrates that the proposed rule would protect human health by reducing community exposure to harmful air pollution from vehicles. Specifically, we estimate that the Clean Cars Minnesota rule would reduce more than 6,000 tons of non-methane organic gases and nitrogen oxides and over 3,000 tons of particle pollution in the first 10 years of implementation alone. This rule would prevent hundreds of premature deaths from respiratory and cardiovascular health effects of air pollution during that same time period. And the economic value of these avoided deaths and other negative health impacts could be as high as $3.2 billion. You can find more information about potential health benefits on page 79 of the SONAR. MPCA's analysis also looked at the equity impacts of the proposed rule. Our equity analysis begins on page 83 of the SONAR. Currently, lower income communities and communities of color in Minnesota are exposed to higher levels of vehicle pollution due to a history of discriminatory and racist policies and practices in urban planning, housing, and highway design. Our analysis indicates that these overburdened communities would see the greatest air quality benefits from the proposed rule. This slide includes a chart showing which geographic areas specifically would see the largest reductions of harmful air pollution from implementing the Clean Cars rule. PM 2.5 is fine particle pollution, a primary pollutant from vehicles that impacts human health. The dashed line running across horizontally indicates the estimated average pollution reductions we'd anticipate to see across the entire state. On the far left, you can see that the largest estimated pollution reductions would be seen in what's labeled as EJ areas, BIPOC. The BIPOC acronym stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. What this means is that the largest estimated pollution reductions would be in those areas that the MPCA identifies as areas of concern for environmental justice, specifically those with higher concentrations of Black and Indigenous residents and people of color. In the middle, you'll see that low-income areas will also see a larger air quality benefit than the statewide average. And on the far right, you'll see that tribal areas are lower. This is because they are mostly rural and therefore experience lower vehicle-related emissions to begin with. While the proposed Clean Cars Minnesota rule would not entirely eliminate existing air quality disparities in Minnesota, it is an important step towards reducing them, with clear air quality benefits for some of our more overburdened communities. Finally, I want to cover what the MPCA's analysis found in terms of potential costs and benefits for consumers who purchase a new vehicle after the Clean Car standards have been implemented. First, let's cover the basics for consumers looking to buy a new LEV certified vehicle. As I introduced earlier, LEV certified vehicles are already what's for sale at Minnesota dealerships and have been what's for sale for the last 8 years. However, a potential cost difference could occur if in the future auto manufacturers begin producing 2 different models, one cleaner, more efficient model for LEV states and one higher emitting model for non-LEV states. MPCA analyzed the potential impact to consumers of this possible price difference and found that there is a negligible difference in terms of costs and benefits for most consumers. Essentially, the potential higher upfront cost of a LEV certified vehicle would be made up for over time due to fuel savings. When it comes to purchasing a new electric vehicle, the benefits are even clearer. There is a clear consumer benefit based on savings related to fuel and maintenance. Studies indicate that battery costs are continuing to decline, so the financial benefits of battery electric vehicles are expected to grow over time. Lastly, MPCA's analysis also explored possible impacts to traditional vehicle availability. In all but one of the states that have adopted the Clean Car standards, the most popular vehicle model is either an SUV or a pickup truck. This indicates that the availability of traditional trucks and SUVs has not been negatively affected by auto manufacturers delivering more EVs for sale, and consumers in Clean Car states continue to have access to all types of vehicles. So we've reached the final section. In my last few slides, I'm going to walk through the next steps of the rulemaking process and how you can participate. As a reminder, if you are participating via smartphone, computer, or tablet, you can submit questions you have for MPCA staff at any time using the question and answer chat feature on the right side of your screen. If that window is not open, select the Q&A icon at the top right corner, then type your question in the chat window. We will begin answering questions after the presentation, but you can feel free to add your questions at any time. This slide provides an overview of where we are currently in the rulemaking process. In December 2020, the MPCA published the official Notice of Intent to Adopt a Rule with a Hearing in the State Register and on our website. I recommend everyone read the full Notice of Intent and review all of the information it contains. The notice and all of the supporting documents are posted on our website, including the proposed rule language and the sonar we discussed here today. To find this page, go online and search for Clean Cars Minnesota Rulemaking, and this page should appear at the top of your search results. When the notice was published, a new comment period opened, which gives Minnesotans another opportunity to weigh in. During this comment period, all questions, comments, and feedback should be submitted directly to the Administrative Law Judge, or ALJ, assigned to this rulemaking. In February, the presiding Administrative Law Judge, Judge Jessica Palmer-Denig, will hold a public hearing on February 22nd and 23rd, beginning at 3 p.m. both days. Attending this hearing is one opportunity for you to submit questions or comments before the judge. In a bit, we'll share additional ways you can submit your comments. Please note, this comment period will close on March 15th. When the comment period closes, you will also have an opportunity to read and respond to the comments that others have submitted. This is known as the rebuttal period. More information about the rebuttal period is available on the Office of Administrative Hearings website, which we'll cover on the next slide. After the comment period closes, the ALJ will consider materials submitted by the agency, along with your comments, and later issue a decision on whether MPCA may adopt the proposed rule. If you would like to propose changes to the rule, ask a question, or otherwise share your views about the Clean Cars Minnesota rule, there are two possible methods for you to choose from. Regardless of which method you choose, your feedback will be considered equally, and you can choose one or use both methods. This slide shows the first method, which is to put your comment in writing and submit it directly to Judge Palmer-Denig. You can submit your comment online using the Office of Administrative Hearings Rulemaking e-comments website. The direct link is posted here and on the MPCA's website. For step-by-step instructions, search Minnesota Rulemaking Comments website. The OAH website should appear at the top of your results. The image at the right shows what the web page looks like. From here, you can access instructions for how to use the e-comments website as well as their FAQ. You are strongly encouraged to submit written comments to the ALJ through this website. But if that is not possible for you to use this website, you can submit your written comments in person, via US mail, or by fax to Judge Palmer-Denig using the instructions in the public notice. And an important reminder, all written comments must be submitted to the ALJ. If you send your comment to the MPCA instead, it will not be part of the rulemaking record. This slide shows the second method, which is to attend the public hearing online in February and ask your question, share your suggested changes, or voice your opinions there. This is also referred to as giving testimony at the hearing. The hearings will start at 3 p.m. and go until at least 6 p.m. each day. The public hearings will be held online using WebEx, so there is no opportunity to participate in person. Links to join the public hearing are in the public notice. To participate in the public hearings, you'll need access to a smartphone, computer, or tablet with an internet connection and a microphone or headset if you would like to speak. You can also choose to just watch the proceeding. Right now, the WebEx links provided in the public notice are the only confirmed method for how you can join the hearing. We are still working with the Office of Administrative Hearings to determine whether an option for a call-in by phone will work with the hearing process. When we have more information, we'll post additional details on the rulemaking webpage. So thank you for joining us today. We're now going to begin the question and answer portion. As a reminder, if you're participating via smartphone, computer, or tablet, you can submit your questions that you have for MPCA staff using the question and answer chat feature at the right side of your screen. If the chat box is not already open, select the Q&A icon at the top right corner and type your question in and submit.
All right, thank you everybody. Thank you, Amanda, for the presentation. Right now we have no questions in the queue, which if someone is out there, can you please try to submit one, even if it is a test? I'm worried we're having technical difficulties that we can't see on our side. Before we get started with questions, though, I do want to introduce staff who are here to answer questions about the analysis. Amanda Smith, who you just heard go through the presentation, David Bale, an economic policy analyst, and Katie Izzo, the rules coordinator for this rule. Amanda will take most of the questions, but those are the other people you might hear from tonight. Thank you for joining us. All right, well, a test came through, so we'll just give people a few minutes to get their questions in, and then we'll start rolling. Thank you.
I can always do my stand-up routine, too. I don't think anyone wants to see that, so.
All right, we have a question from Kevin. Can you go back to the e-comments section? I can't find where to provide comments on the e-comments website. Am I too early?
Great question. You are definitely not too early. The website is active. I think for me, the easiest way to get to the place to submit comments, what I like to do is go to our MPCA website, which is right here, the mn.gov/cleancars, and then go to the rulemaking tab, and there's a direct link there. But if you'd prefer to go this route, you can, if you search for Minnesota Rulemaking Comments website, that's the kind of full-blown e-comments website, and you can navigate to the MPCA's rulemaking from there. But I find it easiest to go through the MPCA's website.
All right, we have a question. I was listening to the governor on the radio the other day, and he said that with the GM announcement on going to all electric, he didn't even really need a mandate. So are you going to drop this rule?
Great question. You know, the announcement from GM doesn't directly affect this rule, but I do think it kind of goes back to what we were saying before, that the auto manufacturers are investing in this technology, and we want to make sure that we're on the forefront of receiving that technology when it's released, whereas historically we've been on the back end of receiving that. So, but no, we are not. We are pursuing this rulemaking through the process. Thanks.
We have a follow-up on Kevin from Anna Hotz, our rule manager. Note that you need to click on View Topic on the e-comment site in order to submit your comments. So, part of their FAQ as well. We have a question. How long have you been working on this, research included?
Great question. So we published the initial request for comments in October of 2019. But prior to that, we worked with the Department of Transportation and several other agencies on the report that the commissioner mentioned in her video, which was the report on pathways to decarbonizing transportation sector in Minnesota, which is available on the MnDOT website. And that kind of kickstarted some of this rulemaking and other activities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation sector in Minnesota. And that was in 2019, also earlier in 2019.
Right now the queue is empty, so we'll give folks a few minutes. All right, we have a question that's anonymous. EVs have far fewer moving parts and are easier and cheaper to maintain than gas-powered vehicles. Car dealers sometimes complain about this and have suggested that the Clean Cars rule will somehow drive up the cost of cars. Do the studies suggest prices will go up?
Thanks. I didn't want everyone to hear me drinking water. So anyway, I was saying that you can find information on the costs and benefits of the proposed rule starting on page 70 of the SONAR. But maybe I'll give David Bale, my colleague who prepared the analysis, an opportunity to respond to the question. David?
Yes, thank you, Amanda. Yes, hello, I'm David Bale. I'm the economic policy analyst at the MPCA, and I agree that is a good question. We do not expect the purchase prices of EVs to go up. Certainly as supply and production of EVs increase and they become less of a kind of more of a mainstream and less of a niche market choice for consumers, we expect prices to go down. This will concurrently go along with technology advances that will reduce the cost of manufacturing EVs. So yes, so I would just add to what you said, Amanda, that yes, we anticipate that costs of EVs will continue to decline, and evidence in the last few years that's already been happening. Thank you.
All right, we have another question. How will people that can't afford newer vehicles be affected?
Great question. So again, these rules are about their regulations on vehicle manufacturers on new vehicles, not on used vehicles or existing vehicles. So it doesn't affect the used car market. It only affects people who would be purchasing new vehicles. And again, I want to emphasize that the LEV standard is what's been here in Minnesota between 2012 and 2020. And so it's already vehicles are already what's for sale in Minnesota. And additionally, our analysis shows that consumers save money over time through fuel savings from operating these vehicles. And David, if you have anything you want to add to that, I'll be quiet for a moment.
I think you covered it. I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we have a question from Carl Altman. Would this rule help us get a better variety of EVs in the short term?
Great question. So as I mentioned, the EVs, there are certain EV models that are available in states that have these rules in place that are not available here in Minnesota. And so and our analysis also indicated, and again, I'll kind of get us to the slide where that information is in case you want to look at the sonar in greater detail on page 49. But what we're seeing is that in states that have adopted these standards, there are also higher numbers of EVs available on dealer lots. And then beyond that, let me just pull up the question again to make sure that I'm looking at it. Oh, and the short term, I also wanted to note that we are, proposing to adopt an early action credit system, which would incentivize manufacturers to bring more electric vehicles and offer them for sale here in Minnesota sooner, so before the start of the requirements of the rule, which would be at the earliest in model year 2025.
All right, we have a follow-up on the cost question, and it says, but you do expect the rules to increase the cost of LEV vehicles, correct?
So great question, good clarifying question, thanks. So what we looked at was, because again, LEV vehicles are what's on the sale here in Minnesota today, but we did look at the potential for, in the future, if there's a differentiation between LEV vehicles and federally certified vehicles. And so we did look at that potential difference, and there may be a potential upfront cost increase compared to a federally certified vehicle. But again, those vehicles save money over time through fuel savings.
All right, we have a anonymous question. I own a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, and I think it's the best of both worlds. Fill up once every 4 months. What are the requirements of PHEVs versus EVs?
Great question. So maybe I'll help clarify for folks who aren't used to the terminology there. So a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle is a vehicle like the questioner mentioned, where you can plug it in, but you can also fill it with gasoline. Or diesel, or another liquid fuel, depending on the vehicle. And so that kind of extends the range beyond just what the battery can provide. And then when we talk about battery electric vehicles, that's a full battery electric vehicle that only doesn't take any liquid fuel, only takes a battery charge. So the way that the rule works, it's a credit-based system and provides manufacturers with the flexibility to decide which kind of combination of plug-in hybrid electric vehicles or battery electric vehicles they want to provide to meet the standards. And so manufacturers can provide a mix of those. I would also, and they get more credit for providing battery electric vehicles that have long ranges compared to plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. So there's a trade-off that manufacturers manage, but the rule is flexible and allows them to make the decisions for what's best for their fleet and technology.
All right, we have another cost question. According to your sonar, the cost of LEVs will increase $1,139. Why won't you say that?
I think I did say that up front, we are expecting that there could be an upfront cost difference between a LEV certified vehicle and a federally certified vehicle. The questioner did note the number that is in our analysis, which is around a little over $1,000 on average. So yes, thank you for highlighting that. And you can, again, find the details of that analysis starting on page 70 of the sonar, and I'd be happy to answer more questions about that if the questioner has more details that they want to explore. Thanks.
All right, the queue is empty again right now, so we'll give folks a few minutes, and if that's all there is, we'll wrap up. Did we project how much fuel will cost in the years to come?
Great question. That is part of our analysis, and I think I'll ask David to provide that information. David?
Yes, thank you, Amanda. Yes, good question. Yes, and certainly in our analysis of fuel costs for vehicle owners, we did base that on projected fuel prices. These are the gasoline prices as projected by the U.S. Energy Information Administration. We considered a few different scenarios of the Energy Information Administration, or EIA's, projected fuel prices, including a kind of a lower fuel prices future and more of a kind of a reference scenario future. So we looked at various future fuel costs ranging from about $3 to $5 per gallon over the kind of the 10 years of our analysis period, which was model years 2025 through model year 2034. So yes, we did use projected fuel prices. Thanks.
All right, seeing none. Thank you everyone for participating in our meeting today. Again, for more information, go online and search for Clean Cars Minnesota Rulemaking. That will take you to our main rulemaking webpage. That's where you can find a copy of the presentation we heard today, as well as a recording of this entire presentation and Commissioner Bishop's opening remarks. That's also where you will find a schedule of upcoming meetings, including the Administrative Law Judge hearings in February. Thank you again. Have a good night.